chosen one. Something moved in the arrangement of eternity to put this message in front of you today. Not chance, not coincidence. Something in the divine intelligence of a God who sees the specific details of your life, the weight you have been carrying, the promises you have been holding, the questions you have not said out loud, because some things are too fragile to voice. That same intelligence looked at where you are standing right now and said, they need to hear this before they take one more step. Because God is crying, not over your failures, not over your doubts, not over the prayers that dissolved into silence, or the seasons that lasted longer than you thought you could survive. God is crying because you are closer than you know, closer than the delay has made you feel, closer than every almost has made you believe. You are standing at the threshold of the life that was always designed to carry your name, and the grief of heaven right now is not the grief of something lost. It is the grief of something real, something waiting, something prepared, and a child who is 3 steps from it and about to turn around. Everything you are going to hear in this message is freely given. Every word of what comes next belongs to you at no cost. But if at any point something in your spirit tells you that you need something more than what words alone can carry, you will find it in the description and the pinned comment below. Do not go there yet. Stay here. What God has to say to you today cannot wait. Before we go any further, I want to tell you what this entire message holds. By the time it is finished, you will understand exactly why the season you are in is not a sign that something went wrong. You will be able to name the specific signs that tell you, with certainty, whether you are at a threshold or a dead end. You will know what the tears of God actually mean when they have nothing to do with failure. And at the very close of this message, I am going to speak something over your life that I believe you have been needing to hear for a very long time. Everything in what follows is connected, so stay with me from beginning to end. What is waiting for you at the close is the reason this message was placed in front of you today. Now, let me say something to you before we go anywhere else. You are tired, not the kind of tired that a good night of rest repairs. Tired in the place where faith is kept. Tired in the space where hope used to feel natural and now feels like effort. There is a specific heaviness you have been carrying, and if I said the word out loud right now, you would recognize it immediately. You have been faithful in the dark. You have been patient past the point where patience still makes logical sense. You have kept holding on to something you could not always feel, in a season that kept asking you to trust what you could not always see. You have kept showing up when there was nothing to show for it. And somewhere in the middle of all of that faithfulness, slowly, quietly, without you ever making a deliberate decision about it, the question started to form. Is this actually going anywhere? I want you to hear what I am about to say very carefully. That tiredness is not a sign that God abandoned you. It is not a sign that the calling was an illusion. It is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. That tiredness is the weight of almost. It is what every person chosen for something real carries in the final stretch before the door opens. And your body has known it before your mind was willing to admit it. Let me tell you what I mean. There is a fatigue that has been visiting you that is not from illness, not from lack of rest, not from anything a doctor would be able to point to on a chart. It lives in the bones. It is the tiredness of someone who has been carrying something heavier than their current circumstances should require, because the calling inside you is larger than the container your life has built for it so far. That is the first sign. And then there is the sleep. The way you have been waking in the night, sometimes at the same hour, not from a nightmare, not from anxiety in the usual sense, but with a kind of restlessness that feels almost purposeful, as if something inside you is trying to stay awake for something that has not arrived yet. That is the second sign. That is not insomnia. Your spirit is restless because something in you knows the threshold is near. There have also been waves of emotion that arrive without a clear reason. Peace sliding into grief, sliding into hope, all within the span of a single hour, and you have not known what to do with any of them. That is the third sign. That is not instability. The frequency inside you is shifting, and that is what a frequency shift actually feels like from the inside. You have noticed too that the things that used to satisfy you no longer do. The environments, the conversations, the circles you used to move through without thinking twice, they drain you faster now than they fill you. What used to feel like home now feels like a coat you have outgrown. That is the fourth sign. That is not judgment or withdrawal. That is alignment. You are being recalibrated for something new. And there is one more. The knowing, the flashes of it. The moments where you sense something before it happens, where you understand something about a person or a situation before any evidence arrives, where information reaches you from somewhere deeper than logic. That is the fifth sign. That is the seer in you beginning to open. You are standing at the edge of a field that is full, that is ready, that holds everything you have been walking toward. You just cannot see it from where you are looking right now. These 5 signs, everything I just named, they are the sound of the harvest waiting. Now let me tell you what this season has actually been doing in you, because the waiting has not been empty. It has been the most active period of your entire life. You just have not been able to see the activity because it has all been happening underground. The first thing this season has been doing is stripping away the version of you that could not carry what is coming. There is a version of you that needed to dissolve before the life you are called to could begin. Not the you that God made, but the you that fear made. The identity built from the opinions of others, from the need for approval, from the false definitions that got placed on you before you were old enough to refuse them. The wilderness does not take the real you. It takes the borrowed self, the one that was never going to make it through the door anyway. The second thing this season has built is the specific character required for what you are stepping into. Not general goodness. Specific character. The kind of endurance that only forms when there is nothing to show for the effort. The kind of discernment that only sharpens when you are surrounded by noise and have to find signal inside it. The kind of peace that is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of something steadier and deeper than difficulty. These things do not come from a comfortable life. They come from exactly the kind of season you have been in. And then there is the third thing, and this is the one I want to sit with for a moment. There was a man named Elijah, and if you know his story at all, you know that the moment he was most ready to give up on everything, he had just come off the greatest victory of his life. He had called down fire. He had stood against impossible odds and seen the impossible happen. And then, just hours later, he was sitting under a tree in the desert asking to die. He said, "I have had enough. Let me go. I am finished." And God did not respond by rebuking him. God did not send a correction or a lecture or a motivational speech. God sent an angel who touched him on the shoulder and said simply, "Get up and eat." Because the journey ahead of you is too great for you in the condition you are in right now. The angel fed him. Twice. God is not asking you to find energy you do not have. God is asking you to receive what has been prepared for you at the exact point of your lowest strength. Because what is coming after this season requires more of you, and so the provision being offered right now is exactly proportional to the journey ahead. Let me pause here for just a moment. You have been listening, and something in you has been responding. Before I give you what comes next, just take one breath, a real one, not to receive anything new, not to release anything specific, just one slow breath to let what you just heard land in the place that needed it. Let the breath settle. Good. Now let us continue, because what comes next is the part this message was built for. Now, I have something to tell you about the tears of God. And I need you to hear this with fresh ears, because what most people assume about why God cries is not what is actually happening. The common reading goes like this: God cries when we fail, when we wander, when we lose faith, or pull away, or go quiet for too long. That is the story most of us carry, that the grief of God is always the response to our failure. But here is the thing that changes everything. God cries from the position of someone who can see both things at the same time. God can see what you see, the delay, the unanswered prayers, the blisters, the exhaustion, and God can also see what you cannot yet see, the open door, the prepared future, the harvest that is already in and already waiting, and the specific ache of holding both of those pictures simultaneously, of seeing the provision and seeing the person who does not know it is there for them. That is where the tears are coming from. Picture it this way. You have been walking for a long time towards somewhere you were told you belonged, through seasons that felt like they would never end, through stretches where the road disappeared and you had to feel your way forward in the dark. And now you are standing at the edge of a field that is full, that is ready, that holds everything you spent years walking toward. But you are looking down, at your feet, at the blisters, at the dust, at the distance already covered that has made your legs forget what it feels like to believe in arriving. And so, just as the last light of the day is touching the field, just as the harvest is there, visible and real and waiting, you begin to turn around. God is not watching that moment with disappointment, not with frustration, not with the cold, removed patience of someone who has already moved on to something else. God is watching it with the grief of someone who can see the harvest and can see you, and the unbearable intimacy of that distance between what is real and what you are able to perceive. I hear the Father saying something over you in this moment, not because you failed, not because you wandered, but I can see what you cannot yet see. What you called silence was protection. What you called delay was provision. What you called almost, I have always called arrival. This is only the first revelation. There are two more waiting for you. The second is going to tell you exactly what the words "so close" mean for your specific life. And the third is going to change the way you understand these tears entirely. Stay with me. Before part 1 closes, I want to tell you 4 things about the season that is opening around you right now, because there are signs that the formation period is ending and something new is beginning, and I want you to know how to recognize them. The first sign of this new season is that certain people begin to arrive who speak a language you have not heard in a long time. Not a crowd. 1 or 2, maybe 3, who understand something about you without needing you to explain it first, who meet you in the language of your actual calling rather than the language of your history. You will recognize them by the way the conversation does not feel like work. The second sign is that the environments you used to inhabit start to feel increasingly difficult to stay inside, not because they have changed, because you have changed, and the calibration has shifted, and now the mismatch is too clear to ignore. What you once sustained without effort now requires a cost you are no longer willing to pay. That is not weakness, that is clarity. The third sign is that your discernment sharpens. The seer in you, the one I named earlier, begins to operate with more speed and precision. You know things sooner. You recognize patterns before they fully form. The gap between what you sense and what others eventually confirm closes significantly. And the fourth sign, pay close attention to this one. The urgency you are feeling right now is not anxiety. It is the specific pressure of a divinely appointed moment. A moment that has been building toward a convergence that is very close. I am going to give that a name in part 2 that will change how you hold it entirely. There is also something connected to what science has discovered about the human brain during seasons exactly like this one. What a neuroscientist spent 34 years researching about the capacity God wired into you at birth, and why the specific kind of pressure you have been under has a biological signature that explains what you have been experiencing. I am going to give you all of that in part 2, because in part 2, I am going to tell you what so close actually means, not by the calendar, by the kind of time that God operates in. I am going to tell you what everything is, what specifically is waiting on the other side of this threshold. And I am going to give you the final revelation, the one that makes every other revelation in this message make complete sense. If something in you has recognized itself in what you just heard, if something shifted even slightly as you listened, type 555 inches, the comments right now. Let that be the first declaration. Let that be the sound of a chosen one who has been standing at the edge of the field and is not turning back. The field is still there, the harvest is still in, and in part 2, I am going to walk you to its edge and show you exactly where you are standing. Welcome back, chosen one. You came back, and I want you to know that matters, not as a formality, not as a phrase designed to make you feel good about a choice you almost did not make. It matters because of what you chose to return for. Let me remind you of where we left things. In part 1, we named what you have been carrying, the fatigue that lives in the bones, the restlessness in the night, the emotional waves, the change tolerance, the flashes of knowing that arrive before the evidence does. We named what the wilderness has been doing in you, stripping the borrowed self, building specific character, and feeding you the way God fed Elijah at the exact point of lowest strength, for a journey that is larger than the one just completed. And we received the first revelation. The tears of God are not the response to your failure, they are the response to your nearness. In part 2, there are 3 things still waiting for you. The definition of so close, the definition of everything, and the final revelation, the one this entire message has been building toward. The field is still there. Let us go back to it. Here is what so close actually means. And I need to say this carefully, because the word close carries an assumption I want to challenge. When most people hear the word close, they translate it into time. Close means soon. Close means the next few weeks, or the next few months. Close means a measurable distance on a calendar. And because the calendar has gone on for far longer than close should require, many have begun to wonder if close is still even true. Here is what I want to teach you. And this is the part I hope you carry into every single day that comes after this message. There are 2 different kinds of time. The ancient Greeks understood this distinction so clearly that they built 2 separate words for it. The first word is chronos. Chronos is the time you can measure, sequential time, the clock on the wall, the date on your phone, the year that passed without what you were waiting for arriving inside it. Chronos is the time you have been measuring yourself against. And chronos will always make you feel behind, because chronos does not know anything about purpose. It only knows sequence. The second word is kairos. Kairos is the time that God operates in, not sequential time, but appointed time, the fullness of time, the specific convergence of preparation and purpose that does not arrive on your schedule because it is not responding to your schedule. It is responding to your readiness. And readiness is not determined by chronos. It is determined by how complete the formation is. You have been measuring yourself against chronos and wondering why you feel late. But in kairos terms, you are not late at all. You are exactly on time. What felt like delay was actually development. What felt like silence was actually strategy. What felt like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like being forgotten was actually being formed. And here is how you know you are at a threshold and not a dead end. At a dead end, the resistance reduces. The desire fades. The calling gets quieter the longer you stand still. At a threshold, the exact opposite happens. The resistance increases. The desire gets clearer, even as the path gets harder to see. The calling sharpens right at the moment when everything else feels uncertain. If that description just moved something in you, that is not anxiety. That is the pressure of kairos. That is the feeling of standing at the edge of the field in the final hour of daylight, with everything you walk toward right in front of you. The harvest is in, and you are exactly on time to receive it. Now let me tell you what everything means. Because the word everything is large enough to stay abstract if I let it, and I am not going to let it. What you are so close to missing is not a feeling. It is not a vague upgrade to your circumstances. It is specific. Let me name it. The first area is your relationships. The connections that speak your language, the ones that recognize what you are carrying before you have to explain it, those are entering. And the generational patterns, the cycles of disconnection and repeated relational wounds that have moved through the people who came before you, those are ending with you. Because that is part of your assignment. You are the cycle breaker. And you are about to see what that means in the most visible, concrete terms of your life. The second area is your purpose. The calling that has felt like pressure your whole life, like something trying to get out of you that did not yet have a form, that is about to step into the specific shape it was always meant to take. Not a general sense of potential. A specific assignment with direction and clarity, unlike anything you have held before. The third area is your identity. The version of you that has been shaped by the opinions of others, by the weight of your history, by the things said over you before you were old enough to refuse them. That version is finishing. What is coming is a clarity about who you actually are that does not require the validation of anyone else to sustain it. And the fourth area is the connection itself. The channel between you and the source of everything, the one that has felt like static at times, like interference, like a line that was partially cut, that is about to become clear in a way unlike anything you have experienced. Relationships, purpose, identity, connection, that is, everything, not one, all four. Now, I want to speak to the fear some of you are feeling right now, because some of you are not only hoping this is true, some of you are actually afraid that it might be true. There is a quiet terror underneath the hope, at the idea of actually stepping into all of this, of actually having to carry what you have been asking for. I want you to hear this. That fear is not a sign of weakness. It is the sign of someone wise enough to understand what it costs to carry what they are being given. The ones who arrived unprepared had no fear because they had no awareness of the weight. Your holy fear is your readiness. Before this message closes, I am going to speak something over your life. Stay with me through what comes next. It has been building toward that moment since the first word. Now, I need to give you the final revelation, the one this message has been building toward from the very beginning. Here is what the tears of God actually mean. God is not crying because you are failing. We established that in part 1. But here is what I did not tell you yet. God is not only crying because you are close. God is crying because of the specific thing God can see right now that you cannot. Think about this. If you could see someone holding a gift in their hands, a real gift, something chosen specifically for them, something prepared with their exact name on it, and they did not know it was theirs, and they were starting to put it down, starting to walk away from it because the weight of carrying it for so long had made them forget it was ever meant for them in the first place. What would that do to you? What would it feel like to be the only one in the room who could see what was in their hands? That is the grief. Not the grief of something lost, the grief of the gap between what is real and what is perceived. The tears of someone who can see the harvest and can see you simultaneously, and understands that the distance between those two things is smaller than a single step. What you called silence was protection. What you called delay was provision. What you called almost, God has always called arrival. And I hear the Father saying this to you right now. My child, I am not crying because you have gone too far. I am crying because you are this close. I have been preparing this for you longer than you have been waiting for it. And the tears are not grief over a loss. They are the overflow of love, watching someone carry something real, through something real, towards something that is right there. Take the step, the field is ready, and so are you. You were not made for wandering, you were made for harvest. Now, before I tell you what science has discovered about the exact capacity that has been under pressure in you during this season, and I am going to tell you because this is the piece that connects everything I have shared to something specific and available, there is one thing I need to make sure has settled clearly in you first. Because what a neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake found about the brain of someone in the final stretch before breakthrough, it does not just explain what you have been experiencing. It tells you what to do about it. Stay with me through the next few minutes. What is coming is the piece that was missing. Let me take just a moment to make sure 3 things have landed before we go further. The first, the difficulty of your season has not been the absence of God. It has been the presence of formation. The reason it has felt so hard is because what is being prepared for you is genuinely significant. And what is genuinely significant requires genuine preparation. That is not a spiritual phrase designed to make difficulty sound better than it is. That is the actual logic of how God builds things that last. The second is specific. You now know what the signs of a threshold season look like, and you have been living every one of them. You know the difference between Chronos and Kairos, and you understand that you are not behind by any measure that actually matters. And you know what everything refers to. Not a vague promise, but a specific convergence across 4 domains of your life: relationships, purpose, identity, connection. The third is the most important of all, and I want you to hold it after this message ends. You know who you are. You are the seer. You are the cycle breaker. You are the hope restorer, not as something to work toward, as something that has been true about you since before you understood what any of those words meant. What you have been carrying has never been by accident. Now, there is one more thing I want to share with you. Something I believe was placed in this message for a specific reason. What I am about to tell you connects directly to what Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years of his scientific life studying. And when you hear what he found, it is going to give a specific name to something you have been experiencing without having a way to explain it. Here is what Dr. Lake discovered. When a child is born, the brain is operating at a capacity that most adults have never returned to. There is a specific brainwave state called gamma, and in young children, before the pressures of modern life begin to close in, gamma is fully active. It is the brainwave state associated with breakthrough insight, with deep intuition, with the ability to connect ideas in ways that seem to come from somewhere beyond ordinary thinking. Scientists who have studied gamma at MIT, at Princeton, at Harvard, and at several other leading research institutions have found that it is linked to what high performers describe as being in flow, to creativity that arrives as if from outside you, and to the kind of spiritual clarity, the sense of guidance, the sense of knowing that you have experienced in your strongest moments. But beginning around the age of 7, something called the decline effect sets in. The systems of modern life, the demands placed on the mind in continuous sequence, the noise, the stress, the speed, all of it begins to suppress gamma progressively, not permanently, but significantly. And the result is that most adults are operating at a fraction of the brainwave capacity they were born with. Dr. Lake spent 34 years mapping this. What he found is that it is not a personality trait. It is not a spiritual deficiency. It is a biological condition, and it is reversible. What he built as the first phase of his restoration work, the beginning of a system he spent decades developing, is something called the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute audio track that uses a technology called brain entrainment to guide the brain back into the gamma state. You put on headphones, you listen for 7 minutes, and the frequency embedded in the track does the recalibration. No meditation experience required, no mantras, no rituals, no complicated practice. 7 minutes. A woman I want to tell you about described what happened to her after 2 weeks with a single word: synchronicities. She was 38 years old. She had tried every spiritual practice she had come across: meditation, visualization, one retreat after another, searching for the connection she had always sensed was possible but had never been able to hold on to. She came to the Genius Song not because she believed in it, but because she had run out of other things to try. 14 days later, the word she chose was synchronicities. The right person arriving at the right moment, the right conversation finding her at the exact hour she needed it. The language of God, as she described it, becoming clear again, like something that had been tuned to static for 20 years, finally finding its signal. More than 18,366 people have used the Genius Song, and fewer than 4% have ever asked for a refund. That second number matters more than the first. The first tells you how many people tried it. Fewer than 4% refund tells you that the overwhelming majority of the people who tried it, kept using it, did not feel any need to walk away. Now, let me speak directly to a few things that might be sitting in your mind. The first is the question of whether something this simple can actually do what it claims. 7 minutes. I understand the question, and I want to say this. The most profound tools have always worked simply. That is not a compromise on the design. That is the architecture of grace. The complex version is never the more powerful one. The second question is whether this requires some kind of capacity you do not currently have. It does not. This is not a tool built for people who already have everything together. It is specifically built for the moment when the God-given capacity has been suppressed long enough that you cannot find your way back to it on your own. And the third, the most honest question: what if this does not work for me? I hear that. Some people notice a difference within the first few days. Others need several weeks before the shift becomes visible in the concrete details of their life. The formation is happening even when it is not yet visible. One woman was ready to walk away at day 20 and decided to stay 2 more weeks out of simple curiosity. By day 34, she realized she had already changed in ways she could not reverse, which is why the guarantee exists exactly the way it does. 90 days, no conditions. If the Genius Song does not serve you within that time, you receive every dollar back, and you keep everything that came with it. All 4 bonuses remain yours regardless of what you decide. Those 4 bonuses are: the Genius Child Audio, a 6-minute track built for the brains of children before the decline effect fully takes hold, valued at $19. The classic book, the foundational text that inspired The Secret, the one almost no one knows by name, valued at $20. The 22-minute guided visualization that walks through 4 domains of life: financial, relational, physical, and emotional, valued at $29. And the 5 daily habits infographic of those who have sustained gamma activation long-term, valued at $12. $80 in bonuses, included with a $39 purchase. The original price of the Genius Song is $49. The rate of $39 has been made available specifically for this audience by Dr. Lake himself, as part of his commitment to reach those in the season where the need is most real. You will not find this price anywhere else. Not on any marketplace, not through any other source. The only place where Dr. Lake has made this available, at this rate, is in the description below and in the pinned comment. If your spirit is telling you this belongs in your journey, go find it when this message is finished, only if you feel led. Now, let me take this final moment to acknowledge something before we close. You came here today carrying weight, and you stayed. You listened through every part of this message, through the pain that was named, through the revelations, through the science, through all of it. That is not a small thing. That is the choice of someone who decided that what they are carrying is worth understanding. So before I speak the final word over you, I want you to do something. Picture the weight of this season on your shoulders right now. The specific heaviness of the waiting that has lasted too long. The weight of the almost. The weight of the questions you have been holding in silence. Picture it as something real, something with actual texture and mass. And now, in this moment, let it fall. You do not need to carry it into what comes next. That season did its work in you. It built what it was sent to build. You are at the edge of the field now. Let what you have been carrying fall at its border, because you are not going back into that season. You are walking into harvest. You are the seer. You are the cycle breaker. You are the hope restorer, not as aspiration, as function, as what you have always been, even in the seasons when you could not see it for the weight of everything else. And I hear the Father speaking this final word over you now. Take the step. Not the step you have been preparing for. Not the step you feel ready for. Just the next step. The field is ready. The harvest is in. And so are you. You were not made for wandering. You were made for harvest. Right now, in this moment, all across this world, there are chosen ones standing at the same threshold you are standing at. You are not alone in this field. The harvest is large enough for all of it. And there are hands beside yours, unseen but real, ready to bring it in together. And so it is. If something shifted in you during this message, if something landed, if something settled that has been unsettled for a long time, type the words, "I am ready," in the comments below. Let that be your declaration. Let that be the first step you take in the direction of the field. If this message carried something you needed, carry it further. The button below sends this to someone who does not know how close they are. Let it reach them. Stay close. What comes next builds directly on everything that was revealed in this message today. Do not miss it. Think of someone who has gone unusually quiet recently. Someone in a holding pattern they cannot explain. Someone who has been almost again and again and has begun to wonder if almost is all there is. This message was placed here for them too. Share it with them today.